Perfect. So, first workshop of the summer, we're going to take a look at Google Drive in terms of just sharing and organizing files. Because, I mean, we've been working with Drive for a while now, quite a while now, and there's a variety of different ways that you might choose to share your files, different ways that things are being sort of sent to you, or ways you might want to store things so you can find them more easily. And Drive presents a couple of different ways to kind of do that. And I mean, they all work. So it's personal preference to a degree which ones you want to go with versus, which one's the best or the better ones. But let's take a look here. I'll start, of course, on our doc and just mention that all of this stuff is going to be under technology services. And what I'm doing right now, whenever I do these every Monday, of course, through the whole year, and then throughout the summer, recording these sections, I call those Tech Talk. So there's a page linked right on the main tech services homepage there that links to all of these sessions that happen every Monday. So as things slowly load here, there's a calendar and you can suggest topics and then those all get posted here. So there's stuff as these, slowly there's videos in all these big empty spaces here. And the summer stuff will get posted here as well. But beyond that, if you were to just come straight to the tech services homepage, which is slowly loading up, come on. Anytime you're looking for any kind of software help and questions and things, you can click on software support, that very first link, and that page lands you on this one with just basically a link to everything. So if you're wondering about docs, you're wondering about Equatio, or you're wondering about the new library software, um, any of these things, permission click, securely, whatever you're wondering about, generally it's always going to be here, and you can always reach out to me and ask for some help or set up a little one-on-one or whatever you might want to do. But today, of course, is Drive. So I'm going to pull up a Drive account here and just talk about the files and stuff in terms of where we're going to find things and how I would share them. So right out of the gate, when I first opened it, I'm on my drive, which you can see over on the far side here. So let me get my head out of the way and zoom in a bit, make this easier for everybody to see on screen. Um, I'm on my drive. That's not necessarily the spot that everybody's landing on when they open Drive these days. Over the last year, Google added a new page. They call it Home. And you can go into your settings and actually choose if you want the home page or My Drive to be the first thing that you see when you first launch Drive. And that might be a game changer for you right away. My Drive is your files and your folders. So when you create something, it lands in here and then can be in any of the other little folders that you might have in here as well. Certainly you can browse to a folder. If I went into, say, this demo folder, and then I chose to create something, whatever I create will already be in that folder. So I tend to do that myself. It organizes things even before I get started. Like even before I've created it, I already know where it's going to live. And I'm not having to figure that out later or have literally everything I've ever made just in my drive in one big long unorganized list. So when I'm looking at that, I can hit the little arrow on the far left edge there and open that up and actually see those same folders. That can be helpful for moving things around. I can actually browse to a file here, I could click on it, and I could just drag it over into one of these other folders. So if I did need to organize after the fact, that's certainly one way to do it. But I'll talk about finding things before I mention organizing them. So my drive is your stuff. And I mentioned this home page. So the home page they created, and I think they pushed as kind of the default for everybody unless you go change it. This page, let me zoom out a bit. There we go. It gives you a big search bar at the top, just like my drive does, and then it presents you a bunch of files, and in some cases, a bunch of folders. I think if I were to go to my own right now, just do that, drive, and then home. Yeah, see, mine has some suggested folders as well. It just depends on how much activity is going on in the different accounts. So I'll bounce back and forth between these two accounts, mostly so I can create and share back and forth between them here. Um, but if I stayed here for a second and it's listing these files, that's great and all, but the difference between that and when I said my drive is that the things you see in home are not necessarily your files. And you can see that here. Location, some of these are in my drive, some of these are shared with me. If I went back over to my own account or yours, you might see stuff here that's in shared drives. Maybe it belongs to the department or a group that you're with. And so the files you see under home, the short version is they're not all yours. Some of them are, some of them aren't. It's kind of this like suggested list of what Google thinks you want to access now based on, well, reason suggested. Somebody edited it recently is generally the reason suggested. Um, Personally, I can't stand it. I don't use the home at all. It's sort of a quick way to search for things. But again, if I know where stuff is, I don't have to search for it. So I can search for it right here, even if I didn't. When I go back to my drive and I'm looking at my actual files, I have a big search bar right at the top as well. So if I need to search for things, I can still search for things. It's not hindering that in any way. But I'm not a big fan of hitting home and seeing a bunch of files that aren't mine and usually are suggested because I edited them probably yesterday and I'm done with them now. So that's the least likely file that I actually would want to click on. I'm already finished with that file. So what you can do to control that, and again, you can choose one way or the other. Maybe you really love the home page and what it suggests for you is perfect. That's okay. Click the little settings icon up in the top corner and go to settings. I'll give you a moment if you want to open another tab and drag it to another screen and do that as well. You're just clicking settings up in the corner, and it's not that complicated because there's not a lot of settings in Drive that you can change. It tells you your storage, and then the very first thing there is start page. So this is what we're talking about. And so the account that I'm using at the moment, this other account that I have, it's set to home rather than my drive. Whereas as if I switched over to my own account right now, I have that on my drive. Every time I open Drive, that's where it lands. It's just in my files, and I can go from there. The next checkbox here is workspaces. So I'll mention that as well because it sort of falls into the same category. I do have workspaces showing on my own account as well. So what workspaces does, and I'll just get myself out of settings for a moment. It's up in this top section as well. It's not like home. It is your own, well, I'll show it to you. I'll try instead of trying to explain it. What it lets you do is create these workspaces. I think of them as kind of like they're a little bit like a folder, but you don't really put actual files in them. You put shortcuts to other files in them, and that can be helpful. When you create a workspace, and I can just do that right now. I'll call it demo. It pops up and says, all right, well, let's add some files. So when I go to add some files to the workspace, it's going to let me pull files from anywhere that I have access to things. So my own drive, shared drives, stuff that's shared with me. Okay, yeah, storage is generally my own stuff, and then computers. So the point really is that it's more than just your own stuff. So I can go to my drive, and I'm going to grab some stuff pretty randomly here. Sure, this file, insert that, and then I'm going to hit add files again. I'm going to go to shared drives. There's only one on this account, but that's okay. Um, what do I want from this is the shared drive that has all the stuff from our doc. Actually, it's all my tech stuff, but that's okay. Let's see. I'm going to just grab Google Drive, change file ownership. That's a good one. Well, both of them. Why not? Insert drops in two files from there, and then I'll add one more time. The first was from my drive, then I went to shared drives, and then I can look at just stuff that's been shared with me. So it's not in a particular drive, it's just something somebody sent me. Sure, there. So the workspace allows me to bring a bunch of files that, at least in my mind, are all related. Maybe they're part of a project or something that I'm trying to put together and I need all these files in one place. That's okay. They're coming from multiple different locations, but I didn't have to make copies of any of them. And in some cases, I don't own them. I mean, this account right now is not me, so really I don't own any of these three. They're all owned by Chris Tyndale, whoever that guy is. And then I own this one. in this account. So it allows me to bring files together, like I say, that could all be part of a related sort of project, but I didn't make copies. So if Chris Tyndale goes and updates something here and I open it, I'm going to see all those changes. And that's really the a big part of course, Drive and sharing and all the collaborative aspects that we have for files here in Google Drive is that you can still have your very own files and those are yours and nobody touches them. But the advantage is that you can also take those files, share them with other people so they not only see them, but they see when you make edits. And in some cases, they're allowed to also make edits, um, which is up to you. And we'll get to there in a moment. If I'm in Drive, again, I see my stuff. We've all seen shared drives at this point, I think. Right now, this account has one. Let's see if I've got any hidden shared drives. Yeah, these ones you will all have in there. You probably hadn't noticed because we automatically hid them for everybody a number of years ago. But when you go to shared drives, there is a link up in the very top corner here that says hidden shared drives. There's nothing sort of secret about them exactly. But we hid them just because they're not drives that you would normally need to browse to and access. And so if we leave them in the main listing, they just clutter things up. And that's obviously not very helpful to anybody. So the idea here is that with these Z shared drives that I'll say ZRDoc, they're all the drives that contain all the stuff from all the different departments that are posted on RDoc. When you go to RDoc and there's a little box at the bottom of a department page with some shared files, this is the folder that it's pointing at. The Z was added before hiding drives was even an option, so it would alphabetically shuffle them to the bottom of your list. But once they allowed us to start hiding drives, that obviously was the better solution. But any of these drives, when things get saved to those drives, whether it's one with you and your department or you and your best friend or whatever it might be, shared drives, when a file lands in there, those files are owned by the drive, not by the person who put them in there, which is a big distinction. Come on, open up. There we go. So here, date modified, file size, there is no ownership on that. And if I go to, let's see, file information, and I looked for details, it just opens a little side panel for me, which is nice. It'll talk about who has access and the size of it and the type of it, but there is no, yep, even a creator. There's no owner listed because the owner, again, is the drive itself. That's super helpful in, say, again, department drives as people are changing roles, changing seats, changing in and out of departments or even in and out of the board. When something gets added to a shared drive for, say, HR or purchasing or payroll, those files stay in that drive even if the individual's account is deleted because they're gone. The drive owns those files, so we don't end up with issues with ownership in that sense. So shared drives are certainly very helpful that way for allowing um, lots of people to access stuff, lots of people to update things and make little changes. And I can even go to a folder here and I can now share a folder. That's kind of a new thing in here. I couldn't, before it was individual files, I couldn't just share a folder with somebody. But it means that I could then take that folder and I could share it with somebody who's not part of this shared drive. So as a department, say, we've got all these different files and folders, but maybe there's one file that we want the superintendent from another department to see, or a principal at a particular school to see, or even somebody from an outside agency to see. You could share just that folder with them, and they'd be able to access what's in that folder without accessing the rest of what's in the shared drive. The third option we see down the left side here is shared with me. So shared with me is files that are not in a particular drive. There's some individual has this file that they've created and they have decided to share it with you. And so when I look at that, I can see there's a bunch of stuff being shared with this account, including some stuff here like Central Office Staff Meeting from 2022. Um, and likely I have access to that because it was shared with everybody in TLDSB, and this account would of course count for that. And so I can go down this list. There's some ancient stuff here because this account's been used for all sorts of different demo and training things for a long time. But you can see lots of different kinds of files, lots of different people who own these files. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't own any of them. I might have editing access to them, and that's great, but I don't actually own these files. So if I went to, say, this one, and I decided that that was a really important file, and I need to organize that so I can find it later. Shared with me is not a place to organize things. I can't make folders in there. I can't sort of sort it the way I might. Well, I can sort, but as soon as there's other stuff in there, it's going to move around. So I wouldn't leave it in shared with me, and I certainly wouldn't make a copy of it because I want to see the changes that owner is making to those files. So what I want to do is right click on this, come to organize, and I add a shortcut. When I add a shortcut to a file, I can put that shortcut in my own drive, in my own folders where I want to find it. So if this is about important assignments that I'm working on, and I have a folder where I keep important assignments, then I can just hit add shortcut. It'll pop up suggested folders, certainly, or I can just say all locations, and I go to my drive, and I have my really important assignments folder in here, which for now I'll just use demo, and I'm going to add it to the demo folder. So it doesn't leave shared with me because it is still just a file that's been shared with me, and I certainly don't want to hit delete. That would delete my access to the file. Instead, I go back to my drive, and now it's Wednesday morning, and I've fired up my computer and I go, oh yeah, where's that important assignment that I was working on? I'm going to go to my important assignments folder, and there it is. Now the difference between that and a regular file that I've created is this little arrow that's here. That's letting me know that's a shortcut to the original file. But that's good. That means that I can open that up, I can read it, I can make changes potentially, and I can see the changes being made by whoever does own that file. Now, in fact, in this demo file, these are all shortcuts at the moment, and this has been deleted. The original item got deleted, so I can just remove that shortcut. I might leave it in there now for future demos, since that's a good example actually to leave in there. Sometimes a file will get deleted by somebody else. In that case, if you knew something was likely to get deleted and you needed a copy for yourself, we're not worried about collaboration anymore. Oh, the same doc. Oh, Tiff's just asking a good question. What's the difference between a shortcut and adding the same document to a workspace? Basically nothing. That's a perfect observation. I could go back to shared with me and find that file again. Let's see. Well, I might not find that. So, oh, there it is. Okay. I could right click that. And when I go to organize, I do have the ability here to add it to a workspace. So if instead of a folder in my drive where I like to keep things, if I knew this was a part of some larger project where I had a collection of files that all weren't mine and I had already created a workspace for it, or I wanted to create a workspace for it, then I could definitely do that. So let me do that here as well. I'm just going to add it to that demo workspace I created earlier. And this kind of goes back to what I said at the very, very beginning. Google provides a bunch of ways to kind of do the same thing. And that's what's happening here a little bit. I've got my demo folder where I like to keep things, and I can go ahead and actually create a file here. This is where it'll be different. Come on, demo, open up. Jeez, it's being slow. Okay. In here, I would be able to go ahead and just create a new document if I wanted to. In my workspace, I'll go back to there. In demo, I now have that today's assignment file. So I can open that up, and both of those are essentially shortcuts, both leading to the same place, to that same file. But workspace, and this is where I call it kind of like a virtual folder, it doesn't have the ability to just create a file right here. I can't create it from scratch in a workspace. A workspace is always referencing files that actually live somewhere else. They don't actually get stored in workspaces. It's essentially always a collection of shortcuts, whether they're your own files or somebody else's files. When I go to my drive though, I do open demo. There we go. I can go ahead and create, not classroom, I clicked on demo. Being laggy today. There we go. I can create a file here. So I can either just right click the empty space and come down to make a document, or I can use the big new button and I can make a document. Same for uploading. And I'll mention that since the menu's here. I could just upload a file directly into my folder here. Similarly, I can't just upload files into Workspace because again, Workspace isn't really a place that any of those files live. They all have to be stored somewhere on a shared drive or somebody's drive. But I'll go ahead and make a document. And I'll call this, let's see, well, I'll do it two ways in case you hadn't seen this yet. The first line in my document can be used as my title. So this is going to be my demo file for sharing. No, I'm talking but not typing here. Let's go. Click my, the cap lock's on. Jeez. My demo file for sharing. And let's crank that up because this is going to be hard to see on your screens. Keep going. Actually, you know what? I want you to see buttons. I'm going to back that off. I'm going to zoom the whole screen. There we go. Better. Um, so as soon as I type that first line, and then I go to click up on the title of my document, it should grab that and immediately throw that in there as the title. So if my title was at the very top, I don't have to retype it again. Now this file will exist in that demo folder. So if I go back to demo for a second, and at most, I can wait for a few seconds, or I can just hit refresh, and that file will appear here. There it is, in my folder. When I've created that, I can, of course, keep it completely private to myself if that's what I want to do. This can be my own file and nobody else's, or I can hit share. When I do, I can go ahead and type in whoever I'm interested in. There we go, myself. And if you're on part of any groups, we use Google Groups for sharing sometimes as well. So you might have a Google group just for your department where emails get sent. Certainly the schools all get a group for staff at MES or staff at King Albert or staff at, I think we even have an LEC one. LEC. We have LEC reception. We have LEC center. Let's see, I think we have staff LEC. Is that a thing? Yeah, there we go. TLDSP all staff. So schools have the same thing. And you would be able to click that and effectively share this file with the entire staff in that particular building. Assuming you're part of that group. Like I can't do all MES. I can choose it, but if I try and send this, it's not going to let me share to that group, or at least it's not going to, sorry, that's a false. It's not going to let me email that group because I'm not part of that group. The permissions will actually work for files. So MES would in fact get access to this file, but they wouldn't get an email about it because I'm not allowed to email that group. So it's a weird 50-50 there. The notify part would fail, but the group would in fact get access to my file. So if you need to share with an entire group, you can absolutely do that. Let me grab myself again here. Because when we're sharing, we have a few other little things that we can look at here. So I've created a file, I want to share it. I can make this person an editor, which of course means they can type wherever they want and make whatever changes they want. I could make them a commenter, which means on a document anyway, they would get what's known as suggested editing mode. They would be able to come into the document and start typing on it and deleting things and making changes. But when they do it, all of the changes are color coded and things that get deleted just get strike through and everything they added has little brackets around it and the owner is going to need to accept those changes. So I'll actually make myself a commenter on this particular file for now so I can demo that a little bit. But the third option is viewer. So if I make this person a viewer, it's basically like emailing them a PDF. And this is why you don't need to necessarily make lots of copies of files. If I want to share it with a couple of people with full editing, I can do that. I can share it with a couple of other people and maybe just let them comment and give suggestions that we can approve or not. And I can share it with an entire school group and make them view only, or the principal group and make them view only. So they can see what I've got there, but they don't get to make any changes. And every time I make a change, of course, they'll see that updated version. But let me go ahead and leave it on commenter for a second here for that demonstration purpose. The fourth option you see on here, you may have never used, is add expiration. So I can add Chris as a commenter and then add an expiration period here. It immediately went to August 7th. It does a full month by default, but I can hit the pencil and I can decide that, you know what, today is the 8th. You only get it for this week. It's going to expire for you on Saturday. I won't worry about a time. Not, that's fine. Done. So it means that I will have access to that until the 12th, and then it disappears from my Drive account and my access. It won't appear and shared with me. It's just gone. So if you need somebody to be able to access something for a short period of time, that is another good way to do that. Notify is something that basically everybody leaves turned on, but don't always write messages and just hit send. So that will make sure that I get an email, even if there's no blah, blah, blah in the message part. If I were to uncheck that, it means that Chris is going to have access to the file, but he's not going to get an email to let him know about the file. So pros and cons there, of course. Less email is nice, but if I have no idea you're sharing the file with me, then that's a bit of an issue. When we're in a meeting or we're in a Google Meet or we're doing something where we all know we're about to share something, then hey, I'll go to Drive and I'll find it and share it with me. But this is an easy way to make sure people see the message or see the file that you've sent them. I'm going to say edit this, send. Once I've shared with somebody, I can go back to this share button and I can go here. And because they're a commenter, oh no, it is there. I was about to say maybe it doesn't give me the option, but it does. After I've shared with somebody, then they have the ability to transfer ownership. That's a big one when people are moving jobs or moving positions or moving whatever responsibilities, let's say, is that you might want to take files that you own and transfer ownership. So in that case, it's going to allow me to take a file that I've created, I've worked on, I own, but I know that I'm not going to be sort of the owner of this project anymore, or this file anymore. I need other people to be able to work with it and share it and do whatever they need to do with it. That's where I'm going to have to come into my share settings that second time after I've shared it with them, and then I can transfer ownership. And there's only one owner. You can't be co-owners of a file. I mean, that's effectively what shared drives do, right? The shared drive gives everybody potentially full access to a file to do things to it and not worry about who owns it. But when I own a file and now somebody else is going to be taking over whatever it is we created that for, I'm going to give them ownership of that file so that they can do anything that they need to do with it and they're not sort of hindered in any way. Or I could just straight up remove access if I need to kick someone off a file. The other thing that I see when I'm in here sharing a file is this little gear for settings up at the top. So you do have a little bit more granularity when you're sharing here as well. I can hit that gear and I can decide that, you know what, editors, even though I gave somebody full editing access, they're not allowed to change permissions and share it with anybody else. You can edit the file all day long, but you're not going to add more people. So I can turn that off if I want to. I can also, if I'm giving people view access, like those principals I mentioned, or somebody who's allowed to comment and make little edits to it, I'm not going to allow them, if I uncheck this box, there we go, they're not allowed to download the file, they're not allowed to print it, and they're not allowed to make their own copy. So that gives me a lot more control over what people are doing with the things that I'm sharing with them. They're not going to just start making copies and sharing it out to people when I don't want this public or I don't want this out into a broader audience. Maybe it's still in draft mode. I don't want you messing with it or making your own copies. I can go ahead and turn off those options. Now, right now I've got the title in there. I can add some different text. And now I want to go take a look at it on the other side here. So if I go to my other account, well, my actual account, I will have an email here from that account. Here it is, letting me know that this has been shared with me. And I didn't write a blurb. Oh, I said edit this. So that's the message that gets added there. I've been invited to comment on this, and I can go ahead and open it. Now, I will also have found that, of course, when I go to Drive and I look at shared with me. It should be right at the top because I think I leave mine sorted. Yeah, I'll leave that sorted by date, so the newest stuff is always right there, and I can open that up. Let me zoom in a bit here. So it lets me know right away I'm suggesting, which means if I decide that is a bunch of nonsense, I can highlight it, and I can hit backspace or delete, and it gets strike through with some color coding. And the color coding would apply to multiple different editors. So I'd be able to add all of you to comment on this and make changes to it, and all of us would get color coding in a different, well, different color. I can add more words in there, hammering away, and then I can, what else could I do? Technically, I could insert pictures, and I can make a bunch of different little tables, yeah, images. Apparently, I can't do drawings or charts. That's interesting that it restricts me from that one. But any changes that I make here, I'm going to be able to see on the other account when I pull that up. And on here, let's get that out of the way for a sec so we can see what's happening. There we go. I can see these changes. I can click there as the owner of this file. And if I click the little accept suggestion, my little check mark at the side, that becomes part of the document. If I see, oh, he deleted that, yeah, that makes sense. Good call. I can accept that suggestion. And that will also be edited. So now no more colors. Now it's just part of the document. It's the way it was set up and created and edited, and that's fine. When I said I've restricted the ability to actually make copies and things, that means that when I come to File, make a copy is not one of my choices. I can't do it. I can't download either. So I'm being restricted here from renaming it. I can't trash it, which means I can't trash it by accident for somebody else, which is nice. I can't print it. I'm locked down to just viewing it here on screen as it is. And maybe at some point in the future, the owner will allow me to start printing and making copies if it's time to hand it out. All right, come back to Drive. And I'll just mention that if I was browsing my Drive here, and I was in, yeah, wrong account. I was like, where did the demo folder go? There we go. Back to demo, and I've got that file there for sharing, and I right click on that. I also have the ability right from my right click to do all the same sharing options, if it will ever open the menu for me. Wow, it's being so laggy today. Hello, where's my menu? Refresh. The one nice thing, even before I've clicked on it, I see that little head and shoulders icon. So I know right away that this file has in fact been shared with some people. But I can click it, right click, there it is, share, and I can copy the link. If I was going to paste it into an email or something else where I needed to share a link to other people in another way, I can copy the link. The nice thing about doing that is when you copy a link and send any document to somebody that way through Gmail, it will actually prompt you right away to say, hey, by the way, this person doesn't have access to this. Do you want to change their share settings? So let me go to the share settings for a second. And I'm going to take Chris off of here, remove, and save. right click again and go back to those share settings. There's one other part there that I hadn't talked about yet. I added specific people or groups. You can add calendar events as well. But down here is general access. And so you can go to general access and change it from restricted to one of these two options. They seem self-explanatory, I would think, but TLDSB just means everybody with a TLDSB account. So everybody in our domain would be able to find that. Everybody who's a staff member, essentially. It doesn't include the student accounts. But if I were to come down and say anyone with the link, that is literally everyone on the planet. There's no limitation. You don't need to be logged into an account of any kind. You could take this link, I could hit copy link and just paste that on Twitter, and anybody who sees it could click on that link and access this document, which means I could give them view access, I could give them comment, and I could even go so far as to give the entire planet editing access to my document. And so just within this shared space here, I can go from completely private and only owned by me and only edited by me, all the way through to letting the entire planet edit this file. So it's up to me how I want to do that. I would say within TLDSB, I don't know if I ever use anyone with the link. Um, Generally, everything I create anyway is stuff that I only want TLDSB to see. So I use TLDSB constantly. And that's where you'll start seeing things show up in your shared with me section that you might look at and go, I have absolutely no use for this. But if I'm going to post something on our doc, I make it available to everybody in TLDSB. When communications is posting stuff and they need to put like people's pictures on the homepage of our doc, they need to make that available to everyone in TLDSB. So those files, if I just say done, those will end up showing up and shared with me, even though you might look at it and go, why on earth do I have access to this? That's why. It's because somebody in TLDSB needed large groups of people in TLDSB to actually have access to it without restriction. So that's how you're able to view it on our doc or view it when you click a link in a memo or something, is that option. Okay, there, I can remove that. It keeps popping open, so I'm going to mention that little details panel here. When I'm on any given file, or even just in a folder technically, let me just be in the folder here for a second. I can come over to the far side, and I've got a few little buttons here. First one that's already highlighted is the list layout, which is the one I use 98% of the time. You can also go to the grid layout, where you see files this way. I don't like it as much because I don't see the file names, and when you've got a lot of stuff there, you don't see as much of it. So I tend to be on the list view all the time. I like to have more details and more titles and information when I'm looking at stuff. Regardless of which view you're using though, right next to it is this little eye for information. And I can click on that guy and I get two options. I get details, in this case it's for the demo folder. I can see who has access. I can manage it right there. That'll pop up the same share box we saw a few times already. I can see, again, who owns it, when it was updated, modified, created, that kind of stuff. And if I click on a particular folder, or file I should say, I get a little sample of that file. Again, I get to see who has access. I can manage it. Same box again. And then I can come down and see some of that specific information about where does this live. That's always a helpful one to know if it's in a folder or a shared drive, who owns it, if there is one, and just the other modification information. Activity lets you know a little bit about what's actually been happening to that file. So who changed permissions, who edited the file, what's been going on that way. That is kind of useful for an entire folder as well. If I were to just click off the file here, I get activity for the whole folder. Now this folder, of course, is really, I mean, you just saw me working with it now, so there's not a whole lot going on. If I jumped over to my own drive for a second, and I hit that info button, because I've got a lot of files that, of course, are shared with people, I expect I'm going to see a lot of other stuff going on here. So I have access to a spreadsheet for some forms that payroll inquiries, which is just the payroll account, edited recently. Kate edited something this morning that I have access to. A bunch of those. She's doing a bunch of them apparently. July 8th. That's some of our assessment data. So it's just giving me an activity rundown of everything going on in my drive right now and what I've been doing. This is all last night. This is automated stuff. Yeah, it's pretty boring to look at the moment. There's nothing too exciting in there. But if you have a folder where you definitely have a lot of different people sort of accessing files in there, it can be handy to look at the activity feed and just see what actually has been going on. In terms of other things in Drive here, and I know I'm 15 minutes, getting close to it. Recent can be handy just to find things that you know you touched recently, and then starred is kind of your way of bookmarking files. So instead of bookmarking, web pages like I have up at the top here, I can actually bookmark a particular file. So I'm going to right click on this guy again, go to Organize, and add it to Starred. That means when I go to my Starred menu over here, I guess a little bit like a workspace, these files can be owned by me, by others. They could be in a shared drive. They can be shared with, they can come from absolutely anywhere. Anything I choose to star will end up on this list. Starred has been around since the absolute very beginning of Google Drive. Workspaces is quite a bit newer than that. It's a little bit more organized and sophisticated that way. And I'll jump to my own workspaces before we finish here, actually. But Starred just lets me star a folder if I want to, if in this case a form, a video, a file, whatever I want. And it's just kind of my short list of important files, or at least that's kind of how I like to describe it and would like to keep it. I'm bad for that myself. I'll prove it. I'll go right to my own account here. When I click start, instead of a very short list of important files, it's gotten a little bit unruly. That's definitely more than just a short list of important files. So I should go through this myself soon and start removing some things that I don't need on here. Like, okay, see, I'm second guessing. This might be this August, or this might be like 3 or 4 Augusts ago. So I'll have to check and see before I just remove it. But there's a bunch of stuff in here that I want to find quickly. One thing that I always star is the master list, the master school assignments and contacts. That's the one that our communications, or I think Wendy Brown, keeps up to date for us. And it's full of exactly that: school, address, principal, VP, phone numbers, the whole bit, their hours, whatever you need to know about the school. So I keep that one starred because I end up using it to figure out principles and things pretty often. And I said I'd show you my workspace. So my workspace is one thing that's nice here, and I can show it this way because I actually have a bunch of them, is a bunch of workspaces here with various files in it, some of which I'll use, fairly regularly, and other ones not so much. So say Schism as an example. This has got some spreadsheets and some data in there that I tend to help out with in terms of just a bunch of spreadsheet formulas and things. But it comes up about twice a year, September and like February. So I don't need to see this here all the time. I can click the three dots here and just hide the workspace. So it doesn't have to be a big cluttered mess. I can just sort of hide that stuff. Progress reports, that's another one I don't think I need at all anymore because we've changed how we do progress reports. I could actually just remove that workspace, but I'll leave it hidden for a moment in case I need to get those again. Which means down below, I see hidden workspaces and the cute little arrow here. So I can open that up if I want to. Click, and I'll see all the other hidden workspaces that I happen to have down here. So COVID, that's one I haven't opened up in a while. I'm sure you guys remember when we started coming back to school, there was a big QR code and a Google form that we were using. There it is right there. That's the Google form we were, scanning it with our phones and letting them know that we were coming into the building kind of stuff. So those are files that I had in one workspace so that I could grab them when I needed to, and then I hid them. And definitely I'd say at this point, I'm probably fine to just go ahead and remove that. I don't expect to need that again. But it means I've got about 5 workspaces right now that I'm kind of actively using. And so I'll go there when I need to find stuff quickly, including obviously summer stuff. This is the form that you guys would have used to register for today's session. All right, I managed to stay away from like editing and actively working in files and that kind of stuff. I wanted to just show moving things around. Uploading certainly is here under new, which I mentioned earlier. I can upload a Word document or an Excel file or a picture file or anything like that that I might want. And I can even upload entire folders of files. One thing I wanted to mention in terms of, again, when you're changing roles and sharing files, and you need to basically get some files to either take with you or to maybe make your own. If I go to shared files for a second, and I discovered that in here, come on, I had maybe a folder of files. That's not the one I clicked on. Why is this being so glitchy today? Services, docs, there we go. If there was a folder of files in here that I realized, no, I need to take that with me, this is really important, um, or I need to make it my own, it belongs to the shared drive, and we've been asked to delete our shared drive because that's been coming up a lot. Probably should mention that at the beginning of the session. For people who have shared drives that are being retired, that you need to download and get your files out of there, the one thing you can't do in a shared drive is transfer ownership to a person. So I can't go to this file. Let me just open it right now. Share. What is with this today? There we go. If I decide to share that file, say with myself or anybody else, I don't have the option here to make somebody the owner. It's just not an option, and I can't just move it out of this, out of the shared drive either. When I go to organize and I try and move it, let's see if it'll let me. I have full access here too. So let's see, my drive. Let's put an example of files if it'll let me. Yeah, I'm going to make myself the new owner. Everybody else who is in there will lose access until this is shared with them. So this I can actually, in fact, do. I won't because you guys have access to that on um, the shared drive right now. The reason I can pull that off, and that's not super common, but the reason is because of the people who have access to this, I am a manager. If you are a content manager, that means that you can add, edit, move, and delete and share content. I'm going to just double check that right now. I'm going to make that other account we were looking at a content manager rather than a full manager. Because up until now, you couldn't just move things out of a shared drive like that. I was about to tell you how to download files so that you could then re-upload them and make them your own. Let's see, can I take, say, this file and move it into my own drive? Or can I just move it around within the shared drive? That's sort of what I'm looking at here. All locations, yeah, see, my drive is grayed out. That's what I thought. Within shared drives, the only one here is this, and I'd be able to move it around within the shared drive. So that's a critical difference. If you've been added to a shared drive, most likely you've been made a content manager. That's the more common status that you get, unless you happen to be the manager of the department or the superintendent or whoever who got the full manager status. Most people in a department are going to be given content manager status. And if that's all you've got, and then you say, well, but I need this file because you're about to close this drive, the only way for me to get that is going to be to download the file or download an entire folder potentially. That would be an option here as well, download. So I can download a file. In this case, it's a Google document. If I choose to download that, it's going to download as a Word document because it has to convert it into something you can use. But you would then be able to go back to your own My Drive and simply upload either the file or an entire folder, put it back into your own drive, and now you own it. It's your file. Nobody else has access to it, and you can choose to share it with anybody you need to. Maybe you've got some shared drives that are being retired and there's a new one created, or an existing one that they want you to put stuff into. Once you own the file, then you would be able to put it into that shared drive. The cleaner, easier way is if you have a full content manager who can do it. Or sorry, full manager, sorry, not content. A full drive manager can actually move those things from drive to drive and shuffle them around. But unfortunately, sometimes we have people who leave and retire and we don't have a full manager on a particular drive. And in that case, tech services can get involved and try and add some people and change permissions and things. But it's if you need it in the moment or you're retiring and you want to take stuff with you, that's where you're going to have to do a download. So I'd come to whatever that file folder happens to be, right click on it and have the option right there to download. Even without right clicking, most of these options do appear along the top bar here once you've selected something. If I have nothing selected at all, then of course I don't get those choices. But when I click on something, I can then download, I can share, I can move it around, trash it, copy the link to it, and then I get into those options as well. Same as my right click. I think if there was a critical piece here to sort of sharing and organizing that I've skipped over. I didn't talk searching much, which I guess I should touch on in our final moments here. Um, because if you do use the home feed, the home page, if that's the one that you like to use, again, these are not, you're not going to be able to just browse your files and find them. You're probably searching. So you can search for whatever you want and see what you can find. I always recommend don't just stop here. This is not a complete search. This is just the quick suggestions for based on what you've typed. If I actually hit enter, I will almost every single time get way more than what just appeared in that quick search result. So if you're not seeing what you're looking for in that immediate little drop down list, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have it or can't find it. You just need to actually hit enter or see all results to get the full search of what you're trying to find. Maybe it was this one that I wanted, the template responses. But beyond that, if I have a little bit more of an idea of what it is I'm after, I can hit the settings or these little toggles, these options at the end of the search bar to open up my advanced search, and then I can start looking for specific types of files, specific owners potentially, words that just have certain files that have certain words in the file, um, parts of file names. I can search particular locations. Maybe I don't have a clue what the thing is called, but I know it's going to be in a particular drive. So I can go there and pick a folder, pick a drive, pick something very specific to narrow down my search. Even stuff that's in the trash, if I wanted to, stuff modified by a certain date, so I know it happened before 2023. I could make sure I do that. Um, Something shared with a particular person. Follow-ups is new. Follow-ups is based on approvals, which we didn't get into today. I have a video about approvals, though, if you're curious. Um, close that. So yeah, searching is powerful. I mean, as much as I said, I like to put things in a folder in Drive where I know I can find them later and not need to sort of constantly search for stuff. It helps keep Drive a lot more organized. Because if I never put things in folders, then really search is my only option because it's going to be this monstrous ongoing list of things that I promise will have copies of copies of copies of copies of files. And you probably know what I mean by that. If I go back to my own for a second here, I believe I'm at least a little bit guilty of it myself. If I scroll down, once it finally loads, it's alphabetized, so I just have to look for C. Yep, here it begins. Copy of, and it's loading again. Copy, copy, copy. This is what I try and avoid. Copies of. Even when I do make a copy of a file, because I'll legitimately need a separate copy that's not connected to the owner and updates and things, I will, most of the time, obviously I can't say always, most of the time, the very first thing I do is rename it. I go up and I get rid of copy of and I give it a proper name and I file it away somewhere. These, I suspect, in a lot of cases, I have because I was demonstrating how to copy something and then never got back to cleaning it up. A lot of these I just don't need. Yeah, a lot of these are just junk from demonstrations. And then after that, regular files again. So you probably have a section alphabetized in your own drive that is copies of stuff. And that is certainly something that you can go in there and clean up a little bit and delete and move around. Maybe open up your drive here on the side with that little arrow and see all those different folders, or even create some folders and then grab something that you're looking for and just drag it into whatever folder it should actually be in. So that's our hour. I'll leave you with that. I don't want to, try and drag it out any longer than we really need to. Is there any other questions here that you wanted to throw out before we're done? Or have I? Yep. What's up, Tiff?
Um, just the
Mm-hmm.
relationship with my manager and I, we're constantly sending documents back and forth. So that could be something I could use. Would you be able to send me that video, please?
Oh yeah, it's on our doc. If I go to
Oh,
support, definitely it's there. And it was, it should be docs or drive. I'm double questioning myself. Did I put it in drive or docs? I know it's on my Tech Talk page. But let me just see. Where did
okay.
I stick
Awesome.
approvals? That's a good. Oh man,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Let me go to Tech Talk because I know I put it there. It was pretty recent. That's what made me think of it. Yeah, it was the last one I did. So that one will be there under Tech Talk for sure. Whenever this finally finishes loading, there's some support document and there's a video there about it. But approvals, yeah, basically lets you write up a document,
Awesome.
send it for approval, and then somebody else gets to review that and basically sign off that, yeah, or make some changes if they wanted to before they say, yeah, this is good to,
That's exactly
publish
what I
and
want.
do whatever you want with. So, yeah, definitely check that out, play around with it, and then, I mean, if you have questions, let me know. But it's a relatively new feature within Google Docs, so it's nice that they've been adding. Well, they're always adding stuff, but definitely check that one out if it eventually loads for you.
Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. So I'll stop the recording there, and oh, something just popped up. Not responsive. We'll wait for that, and that'll be our session for this morning.